This is Dr. B from Scooter B Rocks in Nampa, Idaho. And this is our second video. The first was on working with some local stones, breccia from Reynolds Creek area. And this one we're going to remember that lapidary is not conning or faking people. Fakes in stones are when we sell something as resin, as a real rock. I'll show you some of those the next few days. We mislabel something, or we don't tell people the lapidary process. Lapidary includes cutting the stone, finishing the stone, but it can also include things that you can do to fill a crack, fill a hole, to change the color. In fact, did you know that 95 to 98% of all of the world's agate pendants and jewelry pieces have been dyed by ancient lapidary processes? Some are kept secret, some are highly technical chemical changes within the stone, and sometimes it can include some bad dyes on the surface that are vegetable. We'll be talking about those dyes and other things that happen to stones in lapidary. But we have to say that there's very few cases of fake stones out there. And it's how they're sold and how they're talked up that is the problem. So we'll cover that down the road. And so these can be changed in color. You could dot them. Here's an example of something that's been dotted. It's a rather boring piece of crazy lace jasper from Mexico that just didn't work, or excuse me, agate. And you can see that this has a really nice color zone here, but the rest of it is kind of mixed up here. And again, the agates have been dyed. That's the way it goes. This is the lapidary process for these. Otherwise, they would just be gray. Now, in here we have some zones that are going bad. We have some bunching up of blue. We have some red coming out as brown in here, and a very difficult thing in jewelry of appeal is brown. Now, there are brown stones, there are brown pendants, but when you have brown spotting or something in that, then it tends to detract. Now, it doesn't mean that it's a flaw. There's a misnomer of what is a flaw within a stone, or a flaw within the dyeing coloring process, the lapidary process. But it's just not going to have the high appeal. So this one I've done some dotting with. This has many processes that have occurred to the stone. Here's a little hole here. I really don't mind that. I find that with American women buyers, and that there's a preference for a stone that looks natural. Off to the end here, we have something that's fading out into nothing there, and maybe it was a clear agate zone previously or not. I don't know. There's many different treatment methods and many things that we can do with this. I'll be talking about how to test out the stones and how to work with the stones. And we see on the back here of blues and then some red coloring, and another little spot here kind of shows what's happening in the stone. So this is nice maybe as treated. This took some special glass treatments in order to get these things not to just rub off, because agate and jasper are forms of glass. So we're going to remember here that lapidary can include coloring. This zebra jasper appears to me to have been, the black has been enhanced, maybe the white has been enhanced. It's got really nice contrast going on. And there's a little bit of a start of a brown spot here. Just the way that this stone is, it's not wrong, it's not bad, it's not damaged or flawed. It's just the stone, but there's a little little line in there that maybe the lapidary artist in China or India or Thailand or Hong Kong missed, or they need to go back and redo that. And we see that brown going on through there as well. But let's see, so we can dot them, we can stripe them, we can add things to the stones, and we'll be doing many of those things here. So that's what lapidary is, and we'll be talking about what is truly fake among things that are being sold out there as jewelry. Today's short, brief topic is handling your sanding sponges for jewelry, for glass, for necklaces, for earrings, and for these stones as well too. I like to use these. This is my first pack of assorted, inexpensive from eBay, and the same price on Amazon. It is a soft sponge with a hard coating, and the corundum on the outside at different grits. This assortment has 5 different grits from 60 to 180. So actually the change that you're going to find with the grits of the corundum is that the 80, the 180 here is actually finer than the smaller number. So that's an opposite sort of a thing with sandpaper and grits. The larger the number, the finer it is, and the lower the number, the more coarse that it is. That could be used to clean up a stone, to clean up some of your coating on the back of a stone perhaps. There's a little bit of something there. We could probably take any of these just to gently wipe that off. What I like about these is that you don't have to go get a piece of sandpaper and mount it into something to work with it. That you could just keep these around. I like to keep 1 or 2 of these around at all times and use them. I use them all the time. Now, these can, because it has corundum, if you wanted, you could take a more coarse one of these sponges and you could actually begin to level this down. It might take you a couple of hours to level one face down to use it as a piece of jewelry, but it could be done at home. So a lot of us don't have the expensive lapidary equipment that's out there. And also, the sponge can be taken into small crevices and small areas without buying more expensive types of sanding equipment. And so we could take this and we could cut off that sharp edge right there, or we could actually just take maybe a pair of nippers or pliers and just pull that off, but then we can go back and level that so that it's not going to snag any clothing later. Now here's the thing that we want to talk about today, is what to do with these when they arrive. And the same goes for all sanding papers that you have for jewelry, for glass, for stained glass, for working with ceramics and working with stone, is that these are what I call particle contaminated already as they have come. And even those in the store, 3M and better brands, are still contaminated because employees have let them rub together. What that means is we might have this 180 here, and it has some little particles from this one on it. Now, if we've got a particle or two on this fine one, and we just pull that out, and if we have a really nice agate, maybe a little bit more smooth and glassy than this one, that one piece of grit is going to cut a canal or a stripe, that one piece of grit. And you're going to have to go back and use some other treatments or some other pads to get that canal out. So it does scratch. Corundum is very hard. And so since these are contaminated with different grits, you'll want to go through and take each one by one, and run it under tap water. It's not necessary to greatly compress it to absorb water. But then, run your hand over it and see if you could, just see if anything can be removed, so the contaminant particles are removed, so they're not going to scratch, and that this one's pure. Let them dry well, because you're going to put them in a Ziploc bag. You're going to put each when totally dry, and that's a benefit of not squeezing too much water into it, pulling too much water into it that's going to dry. And take each one and you're going to put it in a Ziploc bag, and you're going to label it with a Sharpie or some other permanent pen, and you're just going to make a check mark on there and say this was washed and is not contaminated. Now that doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect, because these are already mixed up in here a little bit. The sanding block, the sponge, does hold the grip pretty well. I don't see any contaminants, on them, but still, you're going to have to be careful if you have a very fine piece of jewelry or silver or metals or gold that you're working with, because there could still be something happening with that. These are useful for all kinds of materials, including stone, glass. Here they're being sold for wood. I use them in a lot of cases. And the 3M are good, they're guaranteed. 3M has great products. But we're going to take each one of these real inexpensive brands or the 3M sanding sponge after it's completely dry, and we're going to put it in to our sandwich bag. And after you have put them all in sandwich bags, we're going to take maybe a larger one like a gallon or half-gallon Ziploc bag and put all of those in there. We're going to do the same with all of the sanding sheets that you have. And unfortunately, those are much worse than these are, with having chunky pieces of corundum, diamond, other things on them that are going to scratch into your fine jewelry pieces. And maybe that's not as noticeable on some piece of wood, but on fine pieces of jewelry, that's really going to show up. Also, let's see, here's one of them that has just one of these in this pack, has a nice little edge, triangle edge that we can get into something very narrow with, so that's good. But that's how to work with these sanding sponges. Very useful, they're very worth your expense, and personally I found them just a little bit better buy than fine sanding papers. Sanding paper is rather expensive, it does wear down quite a bit, and these tend to be a little bit more permanent. I've used a 3M sponge on many pieces over a period of 2 months, so I get a lot of mileage from these sanding sponges. And as you're doing lapidary work, you're building jewelry, you're working with fine small parts, you're going to find that these are economical, and they're something that you're going to revert back to quite a few times. Now, finally here, we'll kind of take these out of the picture here, and we'll be reminding ourselves of this point here, and do check out the link listed below for more of these. There's going to be a lot of them, and so find the link site below and jump into those. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.